Alright, so for this video tutorial, we're going to be talking about SharePoint Event Receivers. So event receivers are a special block of code, if you want, that you can attach to various artifacts in SharePoint and then have them executed upon a specific event being triggered. So think of them just like triggers in SQL databases. So whenever something happens, then a certain procedure is executed. In our case here, for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to be talking about list-based event receivers. So you can have event receivers on various artifacts, but we're going to be talking about receivers that are being triggered when you add, remove, update items in a SharePoint list or libraries. So for the purpose of this demo, I have my SharePoint 2013 website here, which has the publishing infrastructure feature activated. So I have the publishing pages library in here, and I added to that library a custom event receiver named Page Stripper. So don't let the name fool you. All it does is basically whenever you drop an HTML based page in this library, the event handler is going to kick in and strip out certain pieces of information and then convert it over to an ASPX publishing page for SharePoint. So special piece of code I have in there. Now what we want to do is get a full list of all the event receivers that are currently affecting this document library. So using our friend PowerShell, I'm just going to launch a new session here. I'm going to go and add my SharePoint snap-ins. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get a reference to the web that contains the list. So basically the web that's located here, so the at the root of my local host, and then I'm going to get a reference to that page library. So in PowerShell, I go in, I call the get sp web connect, pass it the URL of my web. There we go. So now my web variable contains a reference to that SharePoint web. I'm going to go in here, now declare a new variable called list, and all I'm going to do is access the library or the array of lists contained in my web objects, and I'm going to go and call directly the pages library in here. So this is going to return me a reference to my pages document library that contains all of my publishing pages. So if we just want to validate that the variable does in fact contain a reference to that object, I just print out the variable, and then you can see that it's filled up, and this is exactly the reference I wanted to get. So now if I want to access the event receivers, what I need to do is access the events receivers properties of that list object. What this is going to give me is a collection of SP event receiver definition. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to call my list variable again, and then I'm just going to call its event receivers properties. So you see this is printing me a full list of every single event receiver that's assigned to my library. The one I was telling you about is the strip new page item heading, and the type of event receiver that this is item heading. So very important. So that that code was declared to be executed whenever a new item is in the process of being added, right? So in the events receivers you have various various types of event receivers you can define. So you could have, for the item addition portion of it, you could have item added, which is going to get executed once the item has finished being uploaded, is checked in, all the metadata has been committed to it. The item adding is before the file is actually committed. So in our case, for me, what I wanted to do was basically intercept the HTML page, strip out whatever I don't need, and then convert it over. So I don't really need that file to ever get transferred completely to the document library. So I'm getting the item adding process. If I scroll down a bit, you'll see that some of them are item deleting, item added. So this one here only executes after the file has finished being transferred completely. So anyway, so for the purpose of this exercise, all I want to do is basically just get a full list of the names of all the event receivers that are assigned to my list, and then figure out what type of event they're associated with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go get a reference to my list, event receivers, and then some of them you'll see as well don't have a name. So those are predefined event receivers for SharePoint. So for example, I believe this one here, the name's empty. So I don't care about this one. This is something that's reserved. I shouldn't touch that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the list of all event receivers. First off, what I'm going to tell PowerShell to do, sorry, my keyboard is in French. Alright, so what I'm going to do is tell PowerShell that I just want to select the name and the type of the event receivers, and then I'm going to do a filter. So the filter I'm going to do is basically I just want to have the events receivers where the name is not null. So I'm going to use this parameter, so $_ which refers to the current item. So it's going to loop through all the event receivers, and it's going to check for the property name of the current one in the loop process where it's not equal to empty quotes, right? And this is going to give me a full list of all the event receivers I have on my document library and the type of event they're associated with. Now, normally what you'll want to do, if I've seen this happen hundreds of times, right? You have a solution that declares so basically when you want to add an event receiver, attach it to an item in SharePoint, what you'll do is you'll normally create a feature, and then whenever that feature is activated, you're going to have code that will make the association. But very often what people do is that the feature they create handles a case where you're adding the event receiver, but when you're deactivating the feature, it's not removing the reference to it. So then the next time you activate it again, you have a second definition associated for that event receiver. So you'll end up having, like, in my case here, the strip new page item adding, you'll end up having like 5 of them. So really what you want to do at one point, I think, is go in and delete them all. So if I want to go and delete my strip new page item adding, I'm cheating here, right? So I'm just accessing it based on position because I know it's the first item in my list. So remember, in arrays in anything.net, basically, because PowerShell is just sitting on top of the .NET framework, the first item in an array is always at position 0. So this here, event receiver at 0, is going to give me my strip new page item adding, and then what I'm going to do is simply call the delete method on it. Boom. As simple as that. So if I go back and run again my list, you see that my strip new page item adding is now gone. So that was it. Hopefully you guys learned a bit about event receivers in SharePoint, and you're now able to automate reports, figure out where certain event receivers are associated and how many times they are associated with the item, and being able to do some cleanup if you have multiple instances of the same event receivers attached to a list or any other SharePoint artifacts.